All right, welcome to episode 7 of Hagen's Alley Books podcast. Today I have on Kurt Kalata from Hardcore Gaming 101. Go ahead.
Hello, good morning.
And we were just talking as soon as we started over here just chatting, and we were talking about like book distribution. I'm like, I need to record. Let's hit record. So, done. All right, let's continue.
Just reiterate what we were just talking about.
No, we don't have to reiterate. Just this is how I just shoot the shit with buddies on the podcast, so it's really just awesome. But yeah, we were just I was mentioning basically just to recap how Barnes and Noble is so crazy to get into, and I actually had the East Coast distributor interested in carrying my books, yet the whole process is so convoluted that they haven't even reached back to me in over 7 months. And you were saying you worked for Borders, so.
Oh yeah, well, back when Borders was still around. I mean, they were a good store, but the way they were run in different ways was very stupid. Although this is not particularly unstandard for the way magazines work, where they would just get everything in at the beginning of the month or whenever they're supposed to come in, and they would have an expiration date that was marked on there. Yeah. And then after that date, we were supposed to pull them, strip the covers, and they're basically like destroyed.
Which is ridiculous to me. It's like such a waste.
It was also a waste for us because, like, in theory, like, if we ripped those up, they were just thrown in the garbage. Like, we weren't even allowed to take them ourselves, even though, like, if we had a cool supervisor, he would let us. But they took that seriously I mean, I'm sure there's some contractual reason, but from our perspective, it seemed pretty stupid.
Well, and especially from, like, you and I, it's like, it's not cheap to print books or magazines and things, and it's like, why wouldn't
Absolutely not.
Why wouldn't they just, I don't know, put them aside and contact whomever distributed it and say, hey, do you want to pay to get it back? And I would, me being the writer, like, yes, please.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those companies are so big that they probably don't have anything to do with it. It's just backstock. They're not going to care. They're probably just throw them in the garbage anyway. But for smaller companies, like, they might want to still sell them in the store. Like, those magazines are basically just used as disposable. But if you look at someplace, like Retro Gamer Magazine, they still sell their back issues on their store, which is what, exactly. For the kind of stuff we do, that would, people would be interested in that.
And that's
it's not just news that expires.
Yeah, and it's something like you mentioned with Martin Alessi, who had Little Player in Barnes & Noble, and they were throwing away his books, and it's like, well, the date is arbitrary because it's looking at games, and that's going to last forever. It doesn't have to be pulled at a certain date.
Yeah, precisely. Like, it doesn't matter if it's outdated. Who cares?
Especially, like, Retro Gamer. It's like, talking about the freaking Sega Master System or something. Like that's going to, next month, be out of date.
Yeah.
Like, no. Absolutely not. And, I mean, it might be a different story with us, since ours wouldn't have a date on it. It would just have a shelf life, I guess, is how it works over there. But either way, though, it's one of those things where I don't like that they just dispose.
Yeah, books worked a little bit differently. Is that they would also have a shelf life that was not determined by anybody that we knew of, like on our end. Yeah. And at a certain point, they would just be like, okay, we need to clear up shelf space. If they're, they would just have people pull them and then send them back to the distributor, and I guess they would get some sort of credit back for it.
It's crazy though.
So at least the books weren't really destroyed for the most part, but it was still, good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where, like you were saying before we recorded, Europe is so much more fluid when it comes to those types of publishing, and it's really crazy how the U.S. is just basically 5 to 10 years behind the power curve.
Well, a couple of the Hardcore Gaming 101 books were picked up in Spain by a company called Game Press. Oh, and when I was over there for the summer, I met with them, and they sort of showed me what the market was like over there. And there's like 4 publishers, including them over there, that publish that sort of stuff. So in addition to doing mine, they have their own books that they also do, and they translate a couple of other ones from English. There's another company called I think Heroes de Papel, and they did a Kickstarter a little while ago to have some of their books released in English. I know they succeeded, but I don't remember which ones. Because I think they did a book on Dark Souls. They did a book on Nier.
Final Fantasy VII? Was that
they did a book on they had like the main 3 Final Fantasies. Like, I don't know what their stage is, because if they released it outside the Kickstarter, I would probably pick up at least one of them just to check them out.
I think there was a Legend of Zelda book, because I have a book from, and I'm not sure if it was who'd you mention was Dave.
I don't know.
What was the name of the company?
Oh, Heroes de Papel.
Ah, okay. Yeah, definitely not my language of choice, but
Yeah,
I heard Dave Chappelle, like, but basically, I remember there was one like translated book on Kickstarter, and there was a Dark Souls book, and they had like 3 or 4 books, and the one that I chose was Legend of Zelda because I'm obsessed with The Legend of Zelda. So I got their Zelda book, and it was excellent. Like, not sure exactly if if they take on other different authors, that's cool. But yeah, it was interesting though, because who did I talk? I talked to Books A Million last week and Dark Horse Comics. Because when I do these Kickstarters, you talk to weird companies, but most of them want you before you release your book.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I want control over what I publish, over what I put my name on.
Yeah, I do that just for just my own production's sake, because I mean I have to work by my own schedule, because otherwise, like,
correct.
I mean, I set my own due dates because they need to be out by certain dates in certain cases.
Yeah. I mean, I do this all as a hobby on the side anyway, so like really the weekends are the only time I have to, record podcasts and also like work on books. So I can't be subjected to a timeline or anything, and I move pretty fast just because I'm OCD, and I'll just sit here for like an entire 12 hours straight just working on stuff. But
yeah.
I'm insane though. But I work on it little by little throughout the year every week, so it's how you get stuff done, right?
Yeah. I mean, I have the last book I was working on was for it was actually pitched to me by a crowdfunding publisher called Unbound.
Yeah.
And that was the Japanese video game Obscurities book, which on the actual Unbound website it didn't quite get there, but once it went to Kickstarter, it was funded pretty quickly there.
I remember when you posted the Unbound website, and I can't remember if I supported it there or Kickstarter, but like I saw it and I was like, the Unbound site's okay, but then when they took it to Kickstarter, that was a different story.
Yeah, like I had heard of them because they had previously done is that a YouTube guy, Stuart Ashens? He had put out a book that was just like bad UK titles that I picked up here, and so I thought I was familiar with the company. But after my book, there's been a couple of other. I guess they were starting to get into video game themed books, because there's one by Guru Larry that he was doing. There's this other author named David Craddock who does a lot of cool, mostly PC stuff.
Yeah.
Books. He did one about, I think, the history of Quake, or just first-person shooters of that era.
Mm-hmm. And I know Larry actually told me to contact Unbound because he knows that like the craziness with, at least for me, shipping internationally with these 5 to 6 pound monstrosities that I produce.
Oh my God.
Holy shit. It's seriously like going to Australia, $75.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Like one of the issues we ran into with this Kickstarter, since Unbound is British, they were charging, I think, like $20 or $25 to ship books from them, and that put out a lot of people. I'm like, well, international shipping's expensive. Like,
exactly. And I don't know if you noticed, but with my Hidden Gaming Gems one, that's actually like, as we're talking, it's probably got like 3 or 4 hours left right now.
Yay!
Yay! But the thing is that the funding where it's funded at, it's lower than my previous ones, but it's only U.S. None of my international back. I took it off because you don't realize Kickstarter uses the shipping to calculate your funding amount, and then they charge you the percentage on also the shipping. So if I charge $75 for shipping to certain countries, 10% of that, so $7 already off the top, is going to Kickstarter basically.
Yeah,
which is crazy. So it's like I lose like $10 potentially per international backer that I have to pay out of the funding amount.
yeah, that's no good. So I had to ship something over to Spain, and it was just like a limited edition as a limited run game I picked up at a convention, and it wasn't that big or that heavy, and it was $25 to send. And that was insane. Like without a tracking number, the cheapest possible shipping. Like,
isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And so like that's where I cut international shipping for the Kickstarter, but then in my store I have in my bookstore, I have a link for international shippers. And so I've been selling pre-orders there because I have to. I can't do Kickstarter with international anymore because it just wasn't working. And I mean, this is what Kickstarter number 5 or 6 for me.
Yeah.
And it's just like learning the woes of freaking shipping. And that's where like Larry Bundy told me to contact Unbound, because he was like, hey, they could do your international. And I talked with somebody from Unbound last week too, and they were just like, well, they wanted to handle the production too. And I'm like, well, for my older books, I can just ship them to your warehouse or whatever. Like, I don't know. Like, I already have hundreds of books sitting in the warehouse right now that I can send to you, like a pallet or something. But it would be expensive. But
yeah, we discussed when we were thinking of ways to reduce the shipping from America. I was like, you could bulk ship them out to me, and then I can try shipping them individually out here. But we did the numbers, and it wasn't worth it.
Well, exactly, and it was with my Super Nintendo book that I just fully shipped out, the definitive one. I was gonna get with I don't know if you know Chris Wilkins.
No.
He does all the he works with like the Oliver Twins, and he does a bunch of different books on the Commodore, and he did like the Fusion magazine and doing a bunch of stuff over in Europe. And he's like, hey dude, I will ship out your books if you can get them to me. And so I did the calculations, and it would be just as much for me to ship each book individually from my house as it would be to bulk ship him from the printing warehouse, overseas to him. And like, do like a split shipping. So I was like, well, I might as well just ship them from myself. Like,
at a certain point, you just find like an airplane ticket to Europe that won't look at your luggage weight, and then just like kind of take them over there yourself, and then you get a European trip out of it.
Well, exactly. It's like crazy. And it's one of those things where like I haven't been to a whole lot of European conventions, gaming conventions, just because I work all the time. Yeah. And so like, but once I start doing that, that's probably what it's going to be, is I'm going to be bringing on a couple of bags on with like flights.
Oh yeah, we got screwed when we went over to Barcelona though, or to Spain, because when we went there, it was fine, but coming back, like they kind of just decided, okay, we need to charge you 150 euros for your one bag of baggage, and it was
what?
Yeah, and of course it's right at the check-in, and we were arguing like we didn't have this issue. Our ticket doesn't say that we have to pay for the check-in baggage, but they just kind of had us by the balls, so we just need to pay because that's like almost $200. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, $200 for your one bag. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I could see maybe America charges like some kind of tax or something coming in.
It's usually like $25, $75 depending on the weight.
Yeah, you would think if it's a 100-pound bag, yeah, okay.
Yeah, but it was just a whatever. But actually, like as far as the Hardcore Gaming 101 books, a lot of my sales come in from the Europe and UK.
Yeah.
And it definitely sort of gives the impression that they value reading a little bit more. Because I know from our end, like I don't know if I told you this, but one of the too many games, if I have the time, sometimes I'll go to see other sellers and see if they want to pick up any of my books. And and one person was flattered that like gamers don't read. I'm like, oh man, that's so depressing.
I'm sure they don't. Let me look at your back catalog, Kurt.
And even commiserating with some of the other authors that admitted too many games is like, yeah, just the conventions in general, they prioritize YouTubers over authors, which is kind of a bummer.
It's why I wasn't there this year. It's like I moved out to Texas, and it's no longer a couple-hour drive. And I'm like, well, if they invite any East Coast one invites me out as a guest, then I'll come out. But the other issue is that they didn't have to the last few years because I was local, so I would just kind of drive out and crash with buddies on the floor somewhere. Like, that's how I did it. And now it's to the point where I have to be a guest, and they're like, kind of get slipped through the cracks. And
it becomes an issue because the cost of the tables is very large, and I think they're focused on game sellers.
They are.
So I mean, that's why when I go to conventions, I usually have stuff that I dug out of my closet to help like subsidize that sort of stuff. And lately, I've also been shipping it, splitting the table with another author named Carrie Wood, who works for the Overstreet company.
Yeah, you did that last year too, didn't you?
Yeah, I did this year and the last year. So she sells some of the books that she did and some of the other books from Overstreet.
She was
Which
super cool. I remember talking with her last year. She's really nice.
yeah, I know that's what Leonard Herman and Brett Weiss were at Too Many Games this past year, and I know they split the table over there too.
Nice. Yeah, Leonard's
I mean,
awesome. He's actually doing the forward to my Hidden Gaming Gems book.
yeah, I think he's good. I'm going to the Long Island Retro Expo next month, and then there's one in New Jersey, the video game con that you were at last year.
Yeah, those are all really fun, and AVGC is growing, and
Yeah.
I know last year, like, I saw Leonard for the first time. It was over at the Coleco one, where there was more authors than people attending, and
Maybe I should have gotten to that one just to hang out with people because
everything was fun.
Yeah, I saw pictures of it. It just seemed like it was nothing but emptiness.
It was, and it was awesome, and like Tim Lepetina was there with us too from Chicago, like Art of Atari guy. And,
he actually traveled. Wow.
Yeah, and they brought him in. They didn't
Yeah.
like they flew him in. And like Coleco, they were serious about it, but it was just they had that whole social media kerfuffle that happened, and people just avoided the convention. But it was just cool, just shooting the shit. And I met Leonard, and I was like, what other conventions do you go to? And he really didn't. And I'm like, well, I'm going to these, and like at AVGC, I was starting to contact some of the convention guys for him, and they're like, well, Leonard can come if he could share a table with you. I'm like, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, hell yeah, you can. And so I got to shoot shit with Leonard at AVGC last year, and then he started to go to more and more conventions, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Because
I finally got to meet him this past year.
He's been writing for 30 years. Like,
yeah, he wrote one of the first video game history book that covered stuff from like the late 70s, early 80s.
Exactly. I was like, well, you have to start going to conventions, man. It's like, and he would bring the brown box from from the classic Odyssey brown box from Ralph Baer, and like he just is a super cool dude too, and hilarious. But yeah, it's one of those things where Too Many Games unfortunately focuses straight on the YouTube community, which is cool, but that's not all there is to the retro gaming community.
And I think that also like there's not many artists that show up at these things compared to like a comic book show where you have a lot of. I mean, I don't know how much like an average convention like that charges for a table, but I know like saying $400 for a weekend that they're not going to be able to make money off of that. Like that's ridiculous.
No. And that's just it. Is like they usually at most conventions have Artist Alley.
Yeah, and I think the stuff we do is closer to what that is. It's more like homemade stuff as compared to everybody else selling old retro games.
Well, exactly. We're not flipping and profiteering. We're just selling our art, basically, or our books. So
yeah,
it's absolutely that. It'd be like the same thing if we made a video game. We're selling the game that we made. It's not reselling the game.
Yeah.
And I mean, most of the game tables at the conventions, they go to multiple conventions all year round, so
yeah,
that's their business at that point. But yeah, it's very interesting, and I mean, like, we're doing something a little bit different than everybody else out there, because kind of just jumped in feet first. You were doing it much longer than me, of course, but
I'd done it when I only had 2 books out.
Hell yeah.
Because I mean, when I was younger, I thought it'd be cool to open up a video game store, and that's one of the reasons I have a closet full of stuff that I just picked up in bulk on eBay or got it with garage sales and stuff. But I don't really want to do that. But it's good to get rid of them.
Well, my idea is that when I retire, which from my job is about 6 years, it's coming up close actually. Since I'm military now. So in 6 years when I retire, like I think the wife wants to move out to like Tampa, and I want to get like a little store, not a store, but like a little space where I'll have like coffee, maybe a whiskey bar or something, but coffee, a desk, and I can sit there work on books, and like a seat and like TV with some games. And just like a little front for me to hang out with people, sell my books. I have my books there for sale, and then I can shut it down on the weekends and go to conventions.
Yeah.
Like that's it. Like, and my wife wants to do like a cupcake business or something, so if they're next to each other, perfect.
Yeah.
But I would have to have somewhere to go once I'm actually retired, because I got to get out of the house. and that's the key. Because if I sit in the house, I will literally get sidetracked.
I know it's easy. I mean, my main job is I work in Jersey City, which for me is like a almost 2 hour commute,
Oh Lord,
which is long and expensive. But they're also good about letting me work from home,
that's good.
which is good. But it could also be distracting. Depends how much work I have to do.
Yeah, I mean, my job out here is insane right now because I went from a normal job with the military to this one is very engaging, where it's 16 hours a day, most days.
Oh man.
Yeah, I'm up at like 4 a.m. Like even tomorrow, 4 a.m. till about 6 to 7 p.m. most days, and it can be later.
Oh.
Yeah, I get home, eat some food, and pass on the couch and rinse repeat until Friday when I try to drink some coffee at night to stay awake and work on some books.
Yeah.
Love it though. Yeah, I mean, but the thing is that it's most people don't realize that we all work, normal jobs, and then do this as the passionate hobby.
Yeah. It's not exactly a great moneymaker.
No, but it's fun, and
It is.
It's the one thing that I've been mentioning on Video Game Bullshit on the main, the cast, is that I think I like that it's permanent to where when you put out the book, somebody will have it forever.
Yeah.
Like, somebody will. And if people enjoy it, it's worth doing. It's out there forever, and it's literally going to be enjoyed for generations to come. And that's really cool to me. If it makes some cash, great. If it doesn't, great. I mean, I don't know if you were following online, but I had that crazy ass print error.
I did, and that sounded terrible.
Holy shit! I don't even know. It was a multi-$1,000 error.
But they fixed it, right?
So yes and no.
Okay.
So I had a double issue. It wasn't just the print error of the binding, because that company, they reprinted everything.
Yeah.
So, but I also had in my warehouse, I shipped them there, and then the warehouse mailed out 300 books.
Oh.
And they were supposed to check them, and they didn't.
Oh no.
Yeah, and then they said that wasn't their problem. So I'm moving warehouses, obviously. I already have the new print went to the new warehouse, but but so that means all the ones that had errors, which I want to say was about 15 to 20%, had the print error. That ended up, I think I did the math. It's like $5,000 or $6,000 in shipping again.
Oh, jeez.
Now, and then I still had a few hundred books that I were sitting in there, and I could either have them throw them in the trash, and as we just talked about, like, do I want to throw away all of my books into the trash, or pay to ship the pallet to a company to fix it and then ship it back. So what I did was I paid to ship it and all that, and I think that was $1,200 just to get them fixed and shipped in bulk, and I'm shipping them to me. I'm going to ship them out. I'm going to take them to conventions. So there's like a few hundred books that I have that are coming to my house, which my wife will love because, it's going to fill up my garage. But, yeah, basically those would be the ones I take to conventions. They're all fixed, though. So in the end, I'm going to end up having an extra 300 books or 400 books, like extra. But it put me way into the red.
Yeah, that sucks.
Like, I have to take out a business loan, honestly, but it'll be what it is. And if one of these books goes viral or something, then it'll help recover some of the costs. And anything that I sell, I just put it into the bank, and I'll pay off the loan as it goes. Luckily, I'm not feeding my family with the book money, like, for real.
Yeah.
That's the glory of it. But, I mean, the thing is, though, in the end, it'll be fun. And I already have all the replacements now are getting shipped out, so that's already automated and set. The new warehouse is awesome too. It's like when anybody buys something from my Shopify store, it automatically goes to the warehouse and they automatically ship it with my preferred method.
Oh, that's cool.
I don't have to do anything. Like before, I used to have to manually put it in with the old warehouse, and it was bad. But yeah, so. It'll be interesting to see because there's always a learning curve with everything.
Yeah.
It just got too big to the point where I couldn't have the books in my house anymore. It was crazy. And that's probably why you do your paperbacks like you do.
Yeah, I mean they take care of all that stuff pretty easily. I mean the company has some just issues. They're a little bit draconian as to how they want their layouts done.
Yeah.
But I mean they're good for international shipping. There's no real money that needs to be put up in front from their perspective. So that's pretty good. I mean, this past week they put one of my books on sale, but there's also, Amazon has pretty shitty working conditions. So there was kind of a small boycott people going on to try to do it, which is, I totally support them. I totally understand why that they would not want to do that. But at the same time, there's people that aren't, looking to buy my books, and they're like, the company is owned by Amazon. So basically they are published by Amazon. Which kind of puts us in a bind. It's the same thing with the Kindle stuff. Like, they are the publisher, and when they get so big and terrible and people don't want to use them, I mean, again, understandable, but it affects everybody. That there's a lot of customers. I guess we are. I don't know.
Yeah, because I know we've talked at conventions and before. I mean, you were on one of the live panels that we did, and basically you do the whole Amazon thing, and like. One of these days, you may have to make the switch over, and it's a different beast, man.
I was thinking of trying to pitch some stuff to some publishers, but it needs to be something that I think would have like really wide appeal. Like the reason I operate the way I operate is just this whole thing started as like I just wanted to write about stuff that I was playing. If people enjoyed reading it, then that was cool. But it's just mostly focused on what I wanted to do. And the books kind of operate on that same wavelength that, like I just have an idea that I think is cool and just sort of focus on that.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, though, is if you go the route that I do, which is literally the crowdfunding, I mean, as long as you know like what it costs to do the print runs, which with your style, it's cheaper than the way I do shit because mine are hardcover and all that stuff. When you go soft cover like that, it's cheaper too, which is much more affordable. But as long as you know like how much things cost, you can just do the Kickstarter, and then like I know people. Like I met my current printing company through Tim Lapatino, like chatting with him online. Like I'll get you in contact with people, and then you could just do it, like you just do it yourself, and then you can do whatever layouts you want. Like that's why I do it the way I do it, even though technically there's a much larger distribution, obviously, with like an Amazon. Way larger. But I mean that's the reason why I went my route, and I haven't quite went. Like I talk with different companies, and it's like, well, I kind of want my own control. Because again, like I'm the same way where, when I'm doing a book, I kind of want to do what I want to play or what I want to get more into.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons for me the book sometimes takes so long, because it's like, okay, I have a topic. There's stuff that needs to be in there, but I don't actually want to do it, but I have to. Like, it's just part of the process. Like, just something just end up weird, like the Data East book. I didn't intend on doing a whole book on Data East. It was supposed to be like a small thing, like cover a whole bunch of them interesting games, and I started to play more of their stuff, and I'm like, these guys made so many strange, weird games that I have to. That's how it ended up becoming its own book, and I mean, I'm not displeased with it. It turned out very well, but it's not something that has a whole lot of broad appeal. So, like, if nobody bought it, I wouldn't have been too distraught about it.
Well, it's one of those things too where the weird and obscure is fun. And like the other thing is that you probably have people that just like to support and get all the books because they like your writing style, or they're like the stuff that you cover, and you're gonna cover some obscure Data East shit. Well, I'm gonna read about it. It'd be cool.
Yeah,
get enjoyment out of it at that point.
Yeah, it's a tough balance to strike about whether people want to see the more popular stuff given in our style or want stuff that they've never heard of before.
Yeah.
Because, talking about conventions about the Sega books, like Volume 1 is all Space Harrier, Afterburner, Shinobi, like the stuff people are mostly familiar with, versus Volume 2, which is all the early stuff and super obscure things, which was harder to sell. And of course, proportionally, sales are much lower. But at the same time, people are like, I kind of like Volume 2 more because there's just so many things I'd never heard of in it.
Well, and that's what I enjoy most is the stuff that you can't easily find online. I mean, you say Volume 1 and Volume 2, it's just like the same thing where everybody supported my complete NES book, but then the NES Oddities, which is like twice the size and has all the obscure stuff, like it moves slow, but when people see it at conventions, they go crazy about it because they're like, holy cow, what's all this?
Yeah.
Like Famicom and this Famicom disc and all these homebrew games. I didn't know there's this many homebrew games, and they go crazy over it. But like an online aspect, like people kind of only go toward the popular stuff quickly.
Yeah.
It's different. I guess it's just hard to market, I guess, is what it would be.
And I'm trying to split it out because, like, you know, I even for my own purposes, like if I just want to read a book on Metroid, there's no such thing that exists. So that's something that I kind of want to, do for that sake, even if it's, everybody kind of knows what Metroid is.
It would be really cool to read about the obscure aspects of Metroid too.
I started kind of doing I wrote a series on the 2D books, which were published on the website because the main reason is that the 2D games I can play on portable systems, which means I can play them on my commute to work. Plus, I've played them all. I just need a refresher.
Well, yeah.
But the 3D games I need to play on my computer, they're also much longer. Like the Metroid Prime games are like 15, 20 hours versus like
correct
4 or 5 for Super Metroid.
Well, and it's one of those things that I, within the last couple years, was just introduced to Metroid Zero Mission because I never got it as a kid. And I'm like, holy shit, this is like the original game, but like Super Metroid.
Yeah.
And it blew me away. And I'm like, there's just so many different non-touched aspects. And then, of course, you could jump into some of the fan stuff, too. Like that, the one that was like taken down, another Metroid 2 remake.
Oh, yeah, I did a review of that. That was really, really well done.
Exactly. And then you could also, like, if you're doing just 2D on the Metroid stuff, or even, like, in a little back part, you could cover stuff like Oxygen Verge and ones that were clearly inspired by Metroid.
Yeah. I already put that. I did a book on indie games at the end of last year on Axiom Verge. I even got the guy in the cover.
I have a copy of the book.
Yeah, thank you.
And actually, the background of episode 7 is your newer book, NES Cult Classics.
Oh, thank you.
It's the background on where we're talking right now and where it's going to be on YouTube. It's the one that was done by Thor, your art cover that was on your
site.
Yeah, and then it has your picture on it and all that. So, but yeah, like the obscure and weird and wild stuff is fun anyways. And I mean, it's funny. It's like you did your cult book around the same time I'm doing my re-release of my Hidden Gaming Gems book, and like everybody seems to like hit like the same little niche at the same time, which is pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, well, I'm doing the Japanese Obscurity book. I actually was spending the weekend just organizing it because when I had written it, it was in no particular order, and I was gonna leave it up to the publisher, but I'm like, you know what? I don't know how much these guys actually know about video games, so I just. Oh, no. I had to restructure the whole thing. And they just did the manuscript in the format they wanted. So now it's finally ready. I'm going to send it off tomorrow. And it's going to take them quite a while. I think that they saw it as a holiday like gift book, but they're not going to have it ready until next year. So it's not actually going to be out for another year or so.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, even though I started work on it a little over a year ago and then just completed it. Which, granted, I mean, it didn't take an entire year because I started and then stopped for a while. And then once the Kickstarter got back, I'm like, okay, I need to finish this.
Yeah, it's craziness, though, that like it takes that long for distribution. But I think when I was talking to other publishers in the U.S. even, they do have like a long time. And half of that, I think, is to throw it in their like marketing systems and their catalogs and get it out there too, get more pre-orders.
I think so. I mean, they design it too. Like that's one of the main reasons I could do this.
Yeah.
Is that just I got together all the images and all the stuff, but they're the ones who actually design it compared to the stuff that I do. But yeah, they have to do that. They got to do the actual printing, and I know from their end they're a UK publisher, and they're gonna want to find an American one. Mm-hmm. So they're shopping around, or they will shop around for it.
It'll be interesting to see how the layouts turn out then, because you don't have the direct control. We'll see if it's like comparable to what you normally do.
I like the mock-ups that they did, and I've sort of, I had to divide the pictures in. Okay, these are the ones that you should probably prioritize. I mean, they're going to be giving me some mock-ups through the process, they told me, so that I could tell them like this is. I'm going to trust their judgment as far as layouts more, but as far as what sort of pictures to use and what are the coolest looking ones.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting too. like when you trust others and with your
after
idea.
having control over yourself for so long, be like and let somebody else do it, which is both bad and good because you don't need to worry about it, but you're like very particular. Like they don't want them to screw up anything.
And I'm very OCD, so that's like my nightmare right there.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I could ever have an actual traditional publisher. Maybe, but because the thing is most of those guys have like degrees and all of that, so they should know.
Yeah.
But if they don't have the retro gaming background, like they're gonna miss certain cool stuff that we would throw in there, little hints and shout outs and
yeah.
And I know you also have the one that Rob's working on with you, right? The horror.
Oh yeah, the retro hoarder, and that's almost done because he's we had articles on Splatterhouse and Ghosts and Goblins, but we decided to completely redo those. And same thing with Monster Party. He redid that one too. That was also to take care of because they found the prototype for the Japanese version that was unreleased, and there was a lot of changes.
There was a lot, yeah.
So he documented all those. And as far as my angle is, I'm doing a lot of early horror stuff, like just to see how the horror genre had kind of evolved through the 80s and 90s. Like Rob wrote one for Haunted House, the Atari 2600 game.
Yeah.
But I had also commissioned an article for a game called Project Firestart, which was a Commodore 64 game that was kind of known to be one of the early computer horror games. I did one for The Lurking Horror, which was an Infocom text adventure, which I had played when I was a kid but didn't really get because I didn't know what H.P. Lovecraft was because I was pretty much what the game's channeling.
Yeah.
And then Sweet Home, the Capcom Famicom game, which everybody I think kind of knows about, but it'd be weird not to feature. But one of the other ones that I need to do is there's a company called Horrorsoft, and they put out a couple of adventure/RPGs featuring Elvira.
There's a few.
The games themselves are kind of excruciating, but they for like early 90s games, they have really good visual design. And they have they have a lot of death scenes, which is sort of common.
There's quite a few Commodore 64 horror games that came out too that I played growing up that were based on like obscure B movies and they were only released in Europe, and like Zombie, for example, like ZOMBI, like.
Oh yeah, that's the one that Ubisoft did, didn't they? That they turned into Zombie U. Yep.
Oh no, I'm saying Commodore 64.
Oh yeah, but it was originally like a PC game.
Yeah,
and then they sort of like remade it.
Yeah, it's a really like there's some crazy, obscure, really fun, like the Bad Blood on Commodore. There's like so many different ones, man.
It's that it's an RPG. Somebody just wrote an article about it that I got to post up in a couple months.
Oh really? Yeah, that's cool. I got to read that one then because that was the classics that I played as a kid. Because for some reason the bootleg scene on the Commodore 64 back in the 80s was booming, and my brother was like all over it, and we would constantly have like essentially burned games on disc that we would play.
Yeah. I knew a kid that had a Commodore, and again, all of his stuff was copied. Even like I had an Atari 400, and we had a couple of games my dad had bought, but a lot of them were things that he had just copied from friends. That's just how people got their stuff.
It was like the tape trading back in the day is the same thing, and
yeah,
I don't even know how they were able to get those like in such an abundance, because I mean we had a lot of them, and I don't know how that worked. That would be the interesting aspect to know the history on how they distributed, because that's before the internet, obviously.
Oh yeah, and it was all like everybody kind of knew that everybody copied that sort of stuff. I think it's just like friends of friends and just kind of filtered through that way, because that's how my dad knew somebody somehow from maybe his job or something that he just copied everything from there.
It's crazy though, right? Like,
oh yeah, piracy was everywhere.
I mean, my brother was in high school, so like it wasn't like he was working or anything. Like, and we're in like a podunk town in Cedar Lake, Indiana, in the middle of the cornfields. Like,
and you were still able to get Commodore stuff.
How the hell did we get Commodore stuff? And like all over, I have no idea. And like that's the interesting part. Like, and as I continue throughout the years of writing my own video game memoirs, because I'm doing that, because Rob, Strangman was like, "You got to do it. You got to write out your story." As I write that out, that's the shit I want to figure out, because those are interesting stories to me. Like,
all right, I'm gonna have to get going soon just because we need to start our day.
Oh, no issues, Kurt. Thanks for coming on the cast. So where can people find you that are listening, Kurt?
hardcoregaming101.net for my website. Twitter is HG_101. And I mean, those are pretty much the main spots.
And you can find all his books on Amazon. So.
Yeah, just type in Hardcore Gaming 101. They all pop up.
Exactly. Yeah, because, I mean, whether or not they're on sale, though, depends. But, you know.
Yeah, they're kind of up to Amazon whims. They're the ones who pick it.
Yeah, so your one of your newest books is what, the NES Cult Classics?
That's the latest one. The retro horror game book will be ready for Halloween.
And NES Cult Classics, like, that's one that I haven't gotten yet. 'Cause typically, like, we would see each other on the East Coast, and we would buy.
Yeah, I'd hook you up with a copy.
Yeah, and we'd get each other's books, and so like yeah, what's the big sell on the NES Cult Classics? I see the picture, I see the games that are involved in it. Like I see the three-eyed beast man.
Oh yeah,
Gremlins 2. I see.
The main goal was to the sort of be like known as like the B and C level Nintendo games from developers that weren't Nintendo or Capcom or Konami, and they may not even been like this. Is a lot of one of the main developers we focused on was Natsume, who didn't always have their own publisher.
Yeah.
But if you play them, like their games are all pretty similar. So Natsume, Sunsoft, they were their own publisher, so you sort of like see the connections between Blaster Master and Journey to Silius and Gimmick and all that sort of stuff. There's some other games from like KID was another game company that put out like G.I. Joe and Low G-Man and Kickmaster.
Yep.
So there's a lot of stuff like that. There's some other titles from Jalico, like Wampum was stuck in there, totally rad. There's a bunch of Japanese only games, which are again not the cream of the crop, but some interesting titles that are worth checking out.
Well, exactly, and it's a really cool looking book. I'm definitely looking forward to checking it out in the future, man. Well, thanks for coming on, Kurt. Hopefully we'll get to chat again soon.
Alrighty, thank you very much for having me.